environment, so this includes our home environment, our leisure activities, our access to healthcare, transport, and many other different issues. But in the literature on quality of life and autism, there are several unanswered questions. So one of them is the role of the individual. So the World Health Organization definition of quality of life puts the individual's culture, value systems, goals, expectations, standards and concerns at the centre of their experiences. But oftentimes research doesn't really reflect that, and it takes a more kind of a homogenous approach that doesn't really pick out on the individual's experiences. And also a lack of understanding of the role of mental health. So at least 40 to 50% of autistic individuals experience anxiety or depression symptoms. And these are known to really affect quality of life in the general population, but we don't really understand much about how they affect quality of life for autistic people. So we conducted a questionnaire-based study with 573 males and females, and we administered 2 questionnaire measures of quality of life. So we asked autistic adults to self-report on a validated questionnaire scale, and then we asked caregivers to report on the quality of life of their children and adolescents. And we also measured both core symptoms of autism and associated mental health symptoms. Here I'm just going to talk about anxiety and depression, and also a little bit about ADHD, just because it's been widely associated with quality of life in the existing literature on autism. So I'm going to pick up on a few of the themes that have already really been brought up lots today, which is about individual variability. So the classic design of a study like this would have focused on the differences between groups. So in here, the pink represents the group of autistic individuals, and blue represents our comparison group. But what existing research often neglects is this individual variability. So each one of these dots represents an individual person, and you can see that across all of these measures there is wide variability in how people report in their quality of life. So I'm going to first talk through the kind of traditional approach where we do look at groups, but then what we found in terms of the individual variability. So we did find that consistently with existing research, our group of autistic individuals did, on average, report a lower quality of life than our comparison group. And for adults, that was particularly pertaining to their physical well-being, and for children, that was particularly pertaining to their experiences of school. But as I've mentioned, there are notable individual differences in experiences reported. So what we did is we took our control group kind of average score, and then we took each individual from the autistic group, we took their individual scores, and we compared them with the control group average. And we actually found that over 35% of autistic adults were scoring close to average for quality of life, as were at least 46% of children and adolescents on the autism spectrum. And these are represented by these kind of salmon pink parts of the bars and the light pink at the top. So what this shows is that we also need to be thinking about a strengths-based approach and protective factors that mean that a notable proportion of individuals have a good quality of life. So previous research suggests some of this may be to do with the amount of social support that people receive. So if they have a good social network around them, this could be a protective factor. But then also, what are the factors that lead to a proportion of autistic individuals not reporting having a good quality of life? So this is where I'm going to go on to. So in answer to that question, one that I posed at the beginning, there is a substantial individual variability in experience of quality of life in autism. But in terms of what's meaning that a proportion of individuals do report reduced quality of life, we looked at some different predictors, so age, IQ and sex. Then we looked at core symptoms, which have often been the basis of much previous research that have kind of viewed autism per se as a factor related to reduced quality of life, but what they often neglect is these associated mental health symptoms such as anxiety and depression.
Can I ask why you didn't use ethnicity in number one cohort?
We didn't, because the range of ethnicity included in our sample was not particularly wide in all honesty, but there are a couple of other papers that have come out recently, and so I refer you to, there's a study by Mason and colleagues in 2018, and they did look at ethnicity as a factor. But I really will come on to that in a little while, because we also did a qualitative study alongside this to get at that very issue about kind of what are the other experiences that people. So this was just our questionnaire-based study, but hopefully you can answer the question.
Could I just suggest that when you do your future backup, could you refer ethnicity if we're talking about BAME issues and we don't see a reflection of ourselves, that we can't connect to the studies as well as just generic, it only becomes a generic study, so thank you.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think what I'd like to sort of stress is that this approach that I was talking about earlier is I think how we're going to get into those issues is that to look at each individual and their experiences rather than the kind of group-based approach. So understanding that each and every one of us has different experiences, different needs, and how we can address those specifically. So what we found was that depression symptom severity was, for autistic adults, was a significant influence on their social relationships and well-being, their physical well-being and their psychological well-being. And this was after controlling for their core symptoms and demographic factors. So mental health was a really significant driver of reduced quality of life in autistic adults. And we also found the same thing in our children and adolescents. So again, depression severity was a significant driver of their physical and psychological well-being. So this suggests that depression symptoms are really kind of a significant issue for quality of life and autism across the broad age range. For our young people, we also found that anxiety was a significant influence on their overall well-being, and ADHD symptoms had a significant influence on their risk avoidance behaviours, so avoiding kind of risky social situations or activities. And then finally, we did find that one core symptom of social communication difficulties was strongly related to their school achievement for the young people on the spectrum. And we kind of related that you mentioned a study before by Parsons, and this was something that we really picked up on as well, was that there's a real lack of evidence-based kind of practice and intervention in the school setting to support autistic young people, and this is what we kind of found here, some of the demands that are placed on young people in the school setting can lead to problems sometimes with quality of life.
Thank you, Beth. So as Beth said, we found a kind of not very much qualitative research, and we wanted to take it beyond questionnaire data. We wanted to hear what autistic people are saying and their families are saying. Because the problem with questionnaires, they are very helpful to do mass studies and collect mass bits of information. But sometimes I've found, even when I'm doing kind of clinical assessments, there's so much said that we miss because it has to be defined into a box. So we set up this qualitative project, and it's based around the aspects of quality of life that Beth has already talked about. We wanted to incorporate as much as we could physical health, psychological health, mental health, social aspects, family relationships, friendships, romance, romantic relationships, sexuality, religion, spirituality. So it's quite a big thing to try and cover. And we have so far, as you can see, we do one-to-one interviews, either Beth or I, and the interviews can take anything from an hour, 1 to 2 hours. We don't have a time limit. It's as much as they want to say. We audio record them, and we're going to do qualitative analysis, but we're not there yet. So we're just going to share with you some of our preliminary thoughts and some quotes to give you a flavour of what we think we're finding, and see if that matches with some of your experiences or your thoughts about this. So as you see here, we have 16 adults. We're going to go for 50-50 male to female ratio. And within these, at the moment, we are wanting to reach out to BAME communities. We have 2 adults from the BAME community, 2 adolescents from the BAME community, and 2 parents from the BAME community. We'd like to see that higher, and if any of you, this is a pitch, if any of you would like to take part, or know of anyone that would like to take part, we'd love to hear from you. And the topics we cover, what it takes, the same structure with everyone, anyone from 12 years old up to adulthood. is that we have these themes, and the first one, for instance, is friendships. And then we have sub-themes in the friendship, so it might be having contact with friends, seeing friends, having lots of friends, having no friends. And we ask everybody to rate them on a scale in front of them of how important they are to them for their quality of life, or how important that aspect of their life is affecting their quality of life. And what we're really trying to get to the heart of is what is underpinning any mental health difficulties that they might be having, or tease apart. Do they think it's their autism, or is it mental health, or both, or neither? So we ask, it's a semi-structured, it starts quite structured, and then we take it beyond that. And we ask things like about their strengths in their friendships, what they think they're good at, what they find difficult, but also kind of trying to understand whether aspects of anxiety or depression to start with may affect their friendships, sensory aspects, routines, repetitive behaviours or interests. And it's kind of, it's, as I said, it's semi-structured, so we do ask questions, but we let people talk. There's nothing they can't talk about. So things do come up about kind of other communities, whether it's kind of history, sometimes history of abuse comes up, or sexuality, or asexuality, which has come up with 2 people already, actually. So yeah, that's the kind of, if you were interested, we could talk you more through the structure afterwards. But Beth and I just wanted to give you a flavour, really, because we haven't done our qualitative analysis yet, because we've got to type up all the transcriptions, which is going to take a little while. But we hope to actually get this out in a few months' time. We're going to turn it around quite fast, because we're doing it in a sense to kind of provide information, ideally towards kind of organisations or policymakers, in terms of this is actually the voice of all the autistic communities that we're talking to. This is what's affecting them. These are the barriers that they're experiencing to healthcare, to education, to employment. So come up with sensory first, which it's been talked about a lot today, but I'm kind of horrified when I go to other kind of events and they still don't really talk about sensory aspects or sensory sensitivities and how these might affect people more than anything sometimes in terms of attending things or employment or relationships and so on. So I wanted to just, as you say, you get a copy of these slides, so I'm not going to read them all out, to save my voice a little bit, but also because it might get a bit monotonous. But I wanted to talk about I think, where is it? The smells in schools. This was actually a girl, an adolescent girl, who found the canteen a real source of stress. So she didn't go to the canteen, but all of her peers used to mix and socialise in the canteen at lunchtime, but she had to sit in a classroom on her own. And she was talking about how this impacted on relationship development and maintenance. But I also talked to an adult female who was also in an inpatient treatment program for anorexia at Maudsley at the time I interviewed her. And part of the program, or the model that they use there, very medical model, is to get them all to go to the canteen together and eat together and have this kind of, that's part of the treatment process, is to learn to start to eat in a social setting. But for her, that was her trigger of absolute social kind of hypersensitivity. It's the smell, the sound of people eating with their mouth full, and then also the textures of the foods. And she actually said to me, I actually want to eat. I want to be able to eat, but I can't do it in that situation. But they feel that she's not adhering to the treatment. And so she's just continuously impatiented and not making any progress. So it's one example, I suppose, of where a different approach, an individual approach. Another young female I spoke to who is very sociable, she has a great group of friends, but she often just can't go and meet them when all her friends want to meet, like theatres, bars, clubs, restaurants. Particularly background noise in restaurants and bars is just harrowing for her. And so, although her friends do try and meet in places, she just said actually there aren't a lot of places in the environment or in society that are that easy to go and mix in, that don't have these sensory things going on. there's lots more there, but these are just preliminary quotes that we pulled out of some of our already typed up transcriptions. Another theme or aspect that we're seeing is uncertainty and exhaustion, which I think comes up a lot for many people. This guy who goes home at the end of the day for a nap after every day at work. Now, I'd say quite a lot of the young adults I spoke to or speak to either in clinical services as well talk about this, the going home at the end of the day or the end of the school day, the university day, and having to reset or regroup. And it doesn't mean that this guy is not adhering, he's going into work, he's doing his job really well. But then he described a situation where he didn't want to, they all go to the pub after work, or there's some kind of social gathering, and he just couldn't do it because he was too exhausted. But it kind of made him quite ostracised in the office environment, which led to other problems, which meant he was ostracised or isolated from meetings in the end, and it kind of rolled on. And actually, it happened to another young woman I spoke to, and in the end she was dismissed, and she is going through a tribunal at the moment for unfair dismissal. But it took a long time, and they did it very carefully. But she believes it was because she wasn't adhering to the office etiquette. Thank you. I thought this is interesting, the artificial intelligence that one of our Ceci's daughter has, is that she's learned it very well, she does it very well, and to the outside world she's often doing really, really well, but at home there's a lot of difficulties. And this young lady actually wasn't diagnosed until her second year at university, where she suffered a huge anxiety crisis and stopped getting out of bed and wouldn't go to university. And it's because she hadn't been supported from the transition from home to university and all the change that brought. But she didn't have a diagnosis because she had survived school by being very good at school, doing everything right, and then being between home and school. And then she went to Oxford, and there wasn't the kind of support there. So, but she then it took her a very long time to get a diagnosis because they kept saying, you seem to be managing okay, you're bright, you're at a good university, you look fine. And she said that actually it almost would have changed her whole life if she hadn't gone back into the university system, because she had become very depressed and isolated. It took, unfortunately, a private diagnosis in the end, which cost a lot of money. Okay. What do we do then? And that's why it needs to be a wider conversation about how can we overcome that? Because I do agree, I think some things that they try to do for inclusion in schools don't work, and it actually makes it the gap wider. I think because we ask at the end, and I'll share some quotes about what these people, what the people we're talking to think that services should be doing or research should be doing, and a lot of it is about making other people aware, making everyone else aware and more sensitive to how to manage, how to treat, how to be. And I think that's probably one aspect, because I'll tell you a story in a minute about a teacher that was with a girl now in school, and it's appalling, and it kind of surprises me, because I think I live in a bubble surrounded by people that are working towards a common goal in the autistic community, and actually I realise there's just so many people that still don't understand and still are not empathic towards the autistic community and autistic young people. So I think it is a really difficult issue, and I don't know what to have the answers. This is interesting. Is an adolescent male actually from the Asian community, this young man from the Muslim community, and she said that he just sits and joins in, but his processing is slow. It's just different. He's just processing the words, but then it means that he's just out of every conversation, so he just sits and witnesses it. But then the people around him think that he doesn't want to join in. But I know that from experiences of when we've met him, it just takes a while, and then he'll say something that was in relation to what he was saying. It's just, go on quickly.
Sorry, I'm just saying, he's a slow burner.
Yeah, he's a slow burner, that's it.
That's what I said to people, what's wrong, aren't you interested in what I'm saying? So I'm just a slow burner.
Just slow it down.
I'm just a slow burner, so just, someone else.
And that's it. And actually I think you know, how that can lead into more loneliness. If you just keep being out of conversations and just sitting on the outside, as he gets older, if that's not something that improves, it can lead to all kinds of other relationship or communication breakdowns, employment breakdowns, and so on. So bullying, obviously, is something we've talked about a lot, and some really awful situations. This is something I met this young lady last week, and she told me that she got singled out as a naughty pupil. She got diagnosed when she was 11, and she's now 14, and she's very, very bright, and she's in school and she's in a French class, but the teacher, the way that she describes it, the teacher's taken against her, and it does sound, I spoke to the mother and her, it does sound like this is the case, that because she wouldn't make eye contact with her, because she fidgeted, and because she corrected the French teacher sometimes. She got moved to the front of the class, and it's called the naughty pupil in front of the class, and singled out every lesson, so much so that obviously this young lady's anxiety became very bad. She became quite ill at home, because her anxiety manifests a lot in physical illness. So she was not then going into school, and she was doing her mocks, year 10 mocks. And the mum didn't know for months because this young lady was unable to communicate it to her. So in the end she wrote her a big email, and then they sent that to the school, and then eventually the teacher was told, and it's slightly better, but she's still in that teacher's class, which I think is difficult. Another thing about bullying, which I think it can take many different forms. There is the bullying at school, there's a bullying in the workplace, which I've heard a lot of stories about. But also within relationships, there was a lady I spoke to who said that when she gets into a romantic relationship, she takes a long time to process or work out what she needs or wants from the relationships, but the other person in the relationship moves faster. So then these interactions or dynamics get set early in the relationship, and then she's found herself in a situation where things are happening that she's not comfortable with or she's not happy with, but it's kind of gone so far on that she's taking what she described as a passive role and not an active role. And I think that is something that we need to think about in terms of like bullying or vulnerability, for sure. There's lots of, unfortunately, I think this will come out quite a lot in our qualitative analysis of different forms of bullying and how it impacts on people's, hugely on people's mental health, for sure. I think that's been the biggest impact. And then also that leads to obviously not going into school or kind of feeling excluded at school, or not going to work, not going out. And then the precursors of doing those things can lead to other things in life which make the pathway quite hard for a lot of people. So we obviously wanted to talk about strengths as well. So in every theme we ask what are your strengths in area with your family, with your friends, with your employment, education. Quite a lot said about loyalty and commitment in their relationships, in friendship, but when they find the people that they connect with, they stick to it, they're real, they're raw, they're honest in their friendships, and a lot of people do appreciate that. And solving problems for other people, they're a problem solver. People come to them if they need honest and clear advice on how to resolve things. And being a very considerate person, being a kind person, being thoughtful, because of often the things that people have gone through, the autistic people have gone through, have made them very, very aware that other people go through things as well, who have very difficult times. So this was a quote one of my young adult females said. I said, what do you think we need to be doing? What services do we need? And she said, this world is built for and by neurotypical people. And it is. And I think, through even from the sensitivity things like the flickering lights, which is a common problem, particularly I work in prisons a lot, the sensory environments there are just horrendous for a lot of people, as they are in a lot of schools actually, in hospitals, when you go for an appointment at the GP. There's all these places that actually, if you're not aware that people have sensory sensitivities, it's every step, whether it's also directions in places and getting lost because of the lack of signage. So I reckon there's lots of recommendations. There was like this question at the end, it's a good one, we get lots of ideas which we are going to take on board and take with us in the write-up of this. Is that actually asking people, because for a long time, and I'm not saying it's not a good thing, we've got a lot of time for science as well, but I think for a long time autistic research has been based on what scientists believe autism is caused by and what matters to autistic people. And it's only now I feel that we're trying to, the field is trying to go, hang on, we're like researching this group of people, but let's ask them what they think would help them or improve their quality of life. So the anxiety and depression has come up a lot in this project, and I think is something about the triggers of anxiety, the triggers of depression, which need better understanding and better attention, and how to manage, how a person can be managed, manage themselves. And this was the lady that wasn't diagnosed later, who actually had the COVID diagnosis. But she said about a broader understanding of impact, this idea of how, when the people handing out the assessments and the funding, make it, they're thinking, what impact is this having on this person's day-to-day life? That's how they make their decisions. And it's that idea of what impact is, how debilitating or how impairing it is, needs to be broadened and understand and seen a kind of more holistic approach.
I know that one clinic treats kind of clinical need for a diagnosis as if the individual thinks they need a diagnosis.
Right, okay, that's in line, that's good. It's only one clinic though.
Any for example.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that's really good. Shouldn't be everywhere really. But I won't. If you'll get these slides, so there are some really good ideas. Also, actually, one parent. Sorry, that's a really busy slide. That's going to be distracting. One parent said about we need to understand how to educate our young people into becoming active members of society. It's all very well going to sort of the right kind of school, whether it's specialist or inclusion in mainstream, but actually what about that transition into adulthood so they become independent? And we talk about independence in the qualitative interviews, what makes people feel independent, what's stopping them feel independent, and I think that's something we're not spending enough time on at the moment in research.
I wonder whether you might want to work with those who are working in youth work settings for specifically that aim.
I'm just glad you said that. I'm coming on to that. So you look at my slides, it's something we're starting to look at. So it's something I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because I know we're running over, but this is a project I'm doing away from my PhD and away from King's. About 6 years ago, I worked with Eddie Chaplin in the Brixton Prison Project, where we did a mass screening project for intellectual disability, autism and ADHD, just to sort of get some numbers. And we approached 378 male prisoners, and we recruited and screened 240. Some refused. To an extent, this was a sort of self-selecting study because I just walked around the wings in the prison and kind of asked people if they wanted to be screened. But some were referred to as from the mental health teams in the prison, but they were in themselves, I think, selected because they either came into prison with a diagnosis, which is a whole other issue, or they made themselves known. And I think there's a huge group within the prison who I think probably were making themselves known. And I've said that in our findings, so we actually, in the end, out of the 240 diagnosed 12 with autism, I managed to do a developmental history with 2 parents, which was quite hard because a lot of these people are disenfranchised from their families, and but I managed to get hold of a couple of people. But we did find that in our overall numbers that they were less likely to be from BAME, but I think that issue in itself is part of kind of prior cultural awareness and acceptance and acknowledgement of neurodevelopmental conditions in that community, because a lot of people we went up to some did say, no, I don't get that, no, or they were coming into prison already diagnosed with things like schizophrenia or psychosis, and they were already in a treatment program, and sort of the psychiatry team wouldn't let us see them. So I think it was an issue in itself. And on the back of that project, I offered to do some awareness kind of workshops with the prison officers, but the governor said there wasn't time to do that because the prison officers are under strain. So instead, I decided to run workshops with the guys themselves. So I ran a few workshops in Brixton Prison, and on the back of that, St Giles Trust got in contact. And since then, we've been running across St Giles Trust are a Through the Gate service. They're a charity that support people leaving prison and coming back out, and to obviously break the cycle of reoffending or becoming involved in harmful pathways again. And so now, last year, we got some funding to run workshops in female prisons, because female autism is sort of the area I've been working in more, though I do run the workshops in male prisons as well. And we're in the year 2, and what we found from year 1 is a great need to increase understanding and awareness in all community agencies, at the court level, the magistrate level, the arrest level. But prior to that, what we found, obviously as I said, I'm working mostly with females, is a vulnerability when it comes to harmful relationships or understanding sexuality or harmfully sexual relationships. And so we are piloting a programme this year to go into a few secondary schools and youth community centres to start trying to not necessarily have people that are already diagnosed with autism, because I think that excludes a huge amount of people that might be autistic or might have the vulnerabilities, and we're going to run workshops around healthy relationships, or the idea around consent and protecting ourselves and having, increasing self-worth.
Might be also good to tap into MHFA England. MHFA England, who are doing mental health first aid training. In that situation, there was a correlation, and there's it's like two sides of the coin.
It is, and I think actually something that Damien said before about the social isolation, and social inclusion and social awareness, and the link with suicide and self-harm. One of the reasons we got this project going was because the rates of suicide and self-harm amongst people leaving prison who were autistic was so much higher than non-autistic people.
A third of people are homeless or autistic.
Yeah, that's right.
They don't work for Homeless Link.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah, on the boards. Yeah.
What is it, 10%?
Third of people
It's really,
are homeless or autistic.
yeah.
I understand you going back. I think one of the key areas that I hope you might wish to look at is first and foremost, obviously you're looking at all the pathways.
Yeah.
You're looking at pre-pathways, but I think school exclusions are actually the quite critical zone.
That's absolutely, and we found that was one of the, I don't think I highlighted that very well, but that was one of the biggest pathways to the groups we identified in Brixton, was they'd all been excluded from school because they were seen as bad kids.
So I wonder whether sometimes when we look at how we're going to invest the little money that we say we have, I wonder whether you might look at proofs or other provisions.
So we're going to approve of this. Yeah, that we've got one crew on board.
But also you might want to go to a specialist school as well.
Right,
to have a look at, because I think don't assume just because someone's in a specialist school that everything's rosy there.
No.
I would go in there and just have a look at different settings to see what is conducive in each setting, rather than saying it's just, and because sometimes we think this is a negative setting.
Yeah.
It might be sometimes a better setting sometimes.
Yeah.
In how,
It's taking away out the assumptions, which I think for a long time services and scientists have been making assumptions.
I think you a good point there is the transition period.
Yeah.
Earlier on, like the person couldn't do. So I see it here as well at the university.
Yeah.
Kids are in a home environment, sheltered, and on we go. The wobblers, particularly the girls, when I say they come to university and have the wobbler, the university isn't geared up to assess them as they come through the door. So initial first year they're wobbling already. Then there's the social skills, life skills, because all come from the situation. So it's screening. That's really important. And the transition process.
I think you're right. The thing is, I was a mentor for a university programme for students with autism, but you had to get the diagnosis and you had to already be in the system to be assigned a mentor. And then they suddenly kind of sent me a lot with females actually that were having these intense breakdowns that they didn't know what to do with, but they weren't diagnosed. But you weren't allowed to have a mentor unless you were diagnosed. It's just...
So, you know, health and safety first.
For everyone.
Can I recommend that on exclusions you contact CEN? You go to CEN?
No, I haven't.
They work with families basically on the cases of exclusion, so they either try and get the young person's exclusion overturned or they try and get them support, because the vast majority of exclusions are where their special educational needs are not being met.
Absolutely.
And they're very powerful. I think they started out in Brixton. I think they're moved recently to London.
Thank you for that, because any ideas of how to get this, because we need in a year to make a lot of evidence together.
They've already got, they did a lot of studies as part of what they were looking at, because they could see that in Brixton particularly there was a big issue with exclusions. And then